Okay, let's remind ourselves of some of the 7th grade terminology that we all probably have forgotten. A sentence contains a subject and a predicate. A simple subject is simply the noun that is being discussed by the sentence. The simple predicate is the specific action or statement of condition pertaining to that subject. The complete subject is the noun and all of the words that describe the noun, the adjectives, the prepositional phrases that are directly connected to the noun. All of those words would cease to make sense if you removed the noun from the sentence. They would suddenly have nothing to hold on to. Likewise, the complete predicate is all of the words that answer something about the verb, be they adverbs, prepositional phrases, or the complements. These are the direct objects, indirect objects, the predicate nominatives or predicate adjectives that may occur in the predicate. We'll also talk about the caveman sentence frequently. The caveman sentence is the distillation of the sentence down to its simple subject, simple verb, and necessary object. A compound subject occurs when you have more than one noun that is performing the action or being described in a condition in a single sentence. Rob and Bob shot pool into the late hours of the night. Two objects are performing the action of shooting pool. Rob and Bob. Please note, there is no comma in between Rob and Bob. No matter how many adjectives I might attach to these two guys, a comma should never go in between them to separate them. A compound predicate occurs when you have two actions being described or attributed to the same subject. Lorraine lingered by the jukebox and batted her eyes at cowboys all night. Once again, even though there are objects involved and descriptive adverbs connected to our verbs, we do not separate these two verbs in our predicate with a comma. It's also entirely possible to have a compound subject and a compound predicate in the same sentence. This is still a simple sentence. Rob and Bob, after noticing Lorraine, argued and fought over her. One compound subject, one compound predicate. Both Rob and Bob are performing the actions of arguing and fighting. There are commas around the prepositional phrase, but there is no comma that separates the two elements of the compound subject, nor the two elements of the compound predicate. Two independent clauses comprise a compound sentence. Rob wanted to marry Lorraine and make an honest woman out of her, but Bob was just looking for trouble. In that sentence, we have two separate subjects, now Rob and Bob, performing different actions. Rob is wanting, and Bob is looking. They fought raucously for hours. Meanwhile, Lorraine met a nice fella named Bubba and left. Note in this sentence the use of the semicolon to join the two independent clauses. There's clearly a relationship in these sentences. They're about the same story, and so they belong together, but they're not the same sentence. They each have their own subject and verb, and they have to be connected in some manner. The most common connection between two independent clauses is to use a comma and a conjunction, a fanboys conjunction. Remember those? The importance of recognizing compound sentences is in the punctuation. Knowing when to use a semicolon versus when to use a comma and a conjunction, and remembering never to use just a comma. Those are the end result of understanding sentence construction. There are four kinds of sentences: the declarative, the interrogative, the imperative, and the exclamatory sentence. It's nice to remember that these four exist, but not wholly useful when we're using it to analyze literature. Of them, the only one that really has an impact in what we do as writers is the imperative. The imperative has an implied subject. That subject is you. Go read a book. Listen to Arcade Fire. Make me some brownies. Call your mother. Each of those sentences had a subject, even though it wasn't there in the written words. Each of them had the subject of you. You call your mother. You listen to Arcade Fire. You make me brownies. You go read a book. This is important to us in our academic writing because you is forbidden. Don't tell your readers what to do or what to think or how they think, which means in academic writing you should not use imperative sentences. As fancy and hoity-toity as it sounds, don't say, consider the nature of the metaphors in the poem. What if I don't want to? Now what? Just as you should never use the first person pronoun because it introduces someone for the reader to immediately question, you shouldn't use the second person pronoun either because nobody likes being told what to do. Imperative sentences. Great for recipes, bad for analysis. If you've already been through the Shakespeare lecture, you heard us talk about inverted sentences. In an inverted sentence, the subject and the verb are generally transposed or put into an uncommon order with its object. There are three common types of inverted sentences. There's the classic inversion, which is what Shakespeare likes to use. In the yard stood the leafless oak. Our caveman sentence here is oak stood. We can figure that out by recognizing that the only verb being performed here is stood. And the only thing that could be doing the standing is the tree. Leaves don't stand. Yards don't stand. It's got to be the tree. A second type is the here-there sentence. Here and there are adjectives. They can't be subjects. If I say, there was a hint of frost in the air, my subject is still frost. Its verb is was. The important predicate adjective is there. My caveman sentence becomes, hint was there. Finally, and technically, questions are inverted sentences. They often start a verb phrase and then put the noun into the middle of the verb phrase, such as, did you see the scattering of leaves? Our subject there is you. Our verb there is did see. Our object is leaves. So our caveman sentence would be, you did see leaves. Because it's an interrogative and a question, we've made it into, did you see leaves? Subject complements are a classification and probably would only be an answer on a Jeopardy question, but the two things that make up subject complements are important to us. They are the predicate nominative and the predicate adjective. The predicate nominative and the predicate adjective both follow a linking verb. If I say scientists are explorers of the unknown, my subject is science, my verb is are, and my predicate nominative is explorers. If I say scientists are curious by nature, I again have the subject of scientists, the verb of are, and this time the descriptor, the predicate adjective of curious. What are scientists? Curious. Quick pro tip when it comes to linking verbs, each of the 5 senses has a linking verb associated with it. Feels, looks, sounds, tastes, and smells all can be used to describe a condition as well as an action, so you have to be careful. Finally, objects of action verbs are broken down into 2 categories, direct objects and indirect objects. The direct object is the noun that receives the action of the verb. She punched me square in the nose. Me receives the action of punching. I don't know what I did, but I probably deserved it. She baked me cookies as an apology. Thankfully, she didn't bake me. Me is the indirect object. An indirect object is a noun that explains to whom or to what or for what the action is being performed. Indirect objects always occur in between the verb and the direct object. If there is no direct object, there can be no indirect object. Now, is there some crazy way of violating that rule? Probably. There's no such thing as an absolute in grammar. For the most part, there are no indirect objects if there are no direct objects. Finally, an objective complement follows the direct object and it renames or categorizes that. If I say, she found me irresistible, the thing she found was me. She can't find irresistible. It's an abstract. So irresistible just re-describes me. I now consider her my girl. I'm considering her. Girl renames her. Somewhere on the side of the classroom are a bunch of purple grammar books. Now that you have made it through this reminder lecture, you need to grab one of those grammar books and turn to the back. You'll continue to do the last 2 questions of each exercise for Unit 1, parts of the sentence. These are to be done individually and you can hand them in when you're finished. Good luck!